morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm sitting here and I'm trying to get all this last minute news and all these last minute things because everything is breaking news right now about this fire. Of course, it raged overnight, but everybody's starting to now look at what's going on. It's unstoppable at this point. Huge, heavy winds, gusts up into the 100 miles per hour because there's so much heat from this raging fire that it's actually causing the fire to basically get it completely out of control. Fire hydrants are literally out of water because of bad management. There was no controlled burn for the last, 20 years. So now they have brush fire or brush that's been built up that is fuel for this stuff. That was mismanaged. The governor Newsom didn't do any of the controlled burns. The mayor's off in Ghana for some election of some African dude because of DEI. The fire chief is a DEI that's been focused on hiring more women instead of making sure there's water in the fire hydrants. This is catastrophic failure at every single level. And because of it, well, the people that hate you and the richest people in the country, all their stuff is burning to the ground. Well, we got a bit of a mixed message in this one, don't we? So you get what you ask for on this one. So we'll jump through it. I didn't know what order I wanted to do everything in. We're going to touch on the DEI. We're going to touch on the missing water. Insurance companies canceled a bunch of policies a couple months ago because they looked at it and they're like, well, the governor may not be doing and the mayor may not be doing anything about the fire we think is going to happen, but we're not going to cover homes in this area because it'll bankrupt us, which is a failure on the insurance companies. You know, you pay property taxes to make sure that you have fire and water, or fire. You have water, like fire departments and water and police chiefs. And in the meantime, what do you have is rampant crime and everything burning down. DEI and the way you vote. And this is why I'm going to put this on both channels today, over on YouTube, both the men's channel, Better Bachelor, and my Odd Man Out News channel. I want to talk about this because this is what happens. It is a men's issue. It is a government issue. It is a DEI issue. It is who you vote for issue. It is putting dumb people in dumb positions because of the color of their skin and the way they who they sleep with instead of what they actually know and what they're good at. This is what happens. And this is what so many of us keep screaming about. This is the culmination of a bunch of stupid people in a bunch of positions they shouldn't be in. And we've all laughed and said many times, when it all collapses, I'm just going to sit up on the hill and watch it all burn. Well, we're literally doing that today. This is a real photo in the thumbnail, by the way, taken by actor James Woods. He said in the immortal words of Stephen Crane, which I roughly remember from my youth, and which I paraphrase, the sun was pasted in the sky like a wafer. He took this photo before he had to evacuate. He took this from his home, and that big glow in the distance you see is fire, basically fire and smoke. And he took this from his house, and then he had to evacuate as he was filming, showing the flames leaping over the side of his property and coming up on his house, basically. And he said, well, I have to go, everybody. We didn't think it was going to get this close, so I'm out of here. So I'm going to read the news, give you some updates on what the actual story is, and then we're going to talk about what led us here, because that's actually the real story. They say at least 2 people are passed away and many more are injured as several fires broke out across Southern California amid historically dry and windy conditions. Tens of thousands were evacuated as more than 5,000 acres burned in the Palisades fire in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood in Los Angeles. The Eaton Fire, which broke out miles away from the Palisades fire in Altadena, California, had grown to 2,227 acres with 0% containment. The Hearst Fire, meanwhile, erupted and spread northeast of San Fernando, California, burning at least 500 acres. Now, you hear me keep saying this fire and this fire, and that they're separate areas of fire that either the brush caught and spread around and it's coming in from other directions, or something burning, because of the high winds, blew a ways and then landed somewhere, or homeless people decided, hey, let's watch it all burn, and they started lighting shit up. We don't know. But I would not put out the homeless people lighting things going on as well. 250,000 customers without power in Los Angeles County. Officials I'm just reading the headlines because there is so much to go over today. Officials urge residents to follow evacuation orders. And you see, I don't know if this is supposed to be a firefighter, but there's just a little tiny dribble of water coming out of the hose. It's kind of like that 4 a.m. I had too much to drink and now I have to pee. There's not a whole lot coming out of that hose. It's not even reaching the building in this photo. And I'm reading back through time, but here's a photo from the sky, and you can see it is just enveloping the city. Now, Los Angeles, there's more of Los Angeles off there in the distance, but you can see here at the coast, basically, this has enveloped so much of it. It's totally consuming the Palisades. This is from a picture of a jet somebody took when they were coming in for a landing. It is wiping everything out. And I know many of you are saying, good. But understand that there are a lot of people in California that didn't vote for the dumb people. There are a lot of people that live in California that have been there generations, so they're not wealthy. Their home might be worth a lot of money now, but they're not wealthy. Comedian and actor Adam Carolla, he said his parents have been there, were there for 70 years, and they bought a cheap little place for $30,000, and they ended up selling it for $1.2 million. So if you've been there for a very, very long time, it doesn't mean you have a lot of money. Thousands of structures destroyed. It's a hot mess. Well, this is what happens when you focus on DEI and dumb people and hire people because of the color of their skin and not because of the mental fortitude that they have. This is from, I think, a year or two ago from the LA Times. Environmental rules stoke anger as California lets precious stormwater wash out to sea. California has all these weird rules about the environment and worrying about species of animals, and you can't do this, and you need 73 permits just to turn on water on a new property that you're building. And I remember there was a basketball player. I don't remember who it was, but I think that wasn't Karl Malone. Anyway, there was a basketball player. He just wanted to build an in-ground pool at his home. And he said after something like $60,000 worth of permits and dragging it out for 5 years, he finally gave up and he's like, forget it. Just never mind. Because there's so much red tape in California because of all the environmental stuff. And ironically, because of their environmentalism, they keep dumping fresh water out to sea because they don't want to hold on to the storm water because there might be some ecological disaster. And so they've run out of water. And again, I'm not going to read every story or we'd be here for the next 16 hours. This is the Mayor Karen Bass, a female, black. Now, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that to be derogatory, but I am saying that there's a good bet that she probably got into her position because of the DEI stuff. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass cut fire budget by nearly $20 million. Again, this is what happens when you put stupid people, because California fires rage every 3 or 5 years. They're always a worry, and they say, oh, we're tight on budget. Well, we haven't had a fire in a few years, so let's go ahead and cut the fire budget. Oopsie. How's that working out for you? And now she's being blasted because, as you can see here, from the post-millennial, LA Mayor Karen Bass slammed for being in Ghana while her city burns. This from Breitbart. Democrat LA Mayor Karen Bass in Africa as her city burns. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass spent Tuesday in Africa as part of a taxpayer-funded delegation attending the inauguration of John Dramani Mahama as Ghana's president. The Democrat was there as her city battled wildfires and thousands of residents fled for their lives. Now, why was she at a inauguration of somebody in Ghana? She's not a federal employee. She's not with the federal government. Why is she concerned about things that are happening overseas? You know, as a mayor, you worry about your town. As a state senator or a state governor or a state congressman, I guess you could just sum it up as, you should be worrying about the state, not what the federal government's doing. Now, if you're representing your state at the federal level, then yes, you worry about, but there are there's a state house and there's a state senate. You should be worrying about what's happening in the state. But no, a mayor of a city, she's not even a senator. She's not in Congress. She doesn't represent anything about the state. She represents a city. So why the hell is she in Ghana? CNS News reports Shalonda D. Young, the director of the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, headed the delegation to Accra, Ghana's capital. It also consisted of Virginia E. Palmer, the U.S. ambassador to Ghana. That's a person that should probably be there. And Francis Z. Brown, special assistant to the president and national security counselor, senior director for African affairs alongside Bass. Those people should be there. Why is Bass? As Breitbart News reported, the absence of Karen Bass came as the fast-burning wildfire that broke out in the mountains above Pacific Palisades amid extreme high winds on Tuesday morning threatened the homes of the local public school, which was evacuated. They've deployed more than 1,400 firefighting personnel to combat the blaze. But wait. Those 1,400 firefighting personnel have now evacuated and left the area and are no longer fighting the fire. Why is that, you say? There's no water. No water. Officials didn't give an estimate of structure damage or destroyed in the Pacific Palisades wildfire, but they said about 30,000 residents were under evacuation orders, 13,000 structures. Lifelong Democrat Bass was elected in office in 2022, and if you notice here, where's my thumbnail? She was elected in 2022. When did she cut the fire budget? 2022 or 2023? One of the two. She's only been in office. She's in Ghana. Here's a picture of her in Ghana, laughing it up, having a good time while the city burns. People are here complaining. This is insane. LA Mayor Karen Bass is on taxpayer-funded trip to Africa as part of a Biden administration presidential delegation while her city is burning to the ground. Mayor Karen Bass says, we've declared a state of emergency to amplify our response to this devastating fire and clear a path for rapid recovery. To the hundreds of brave firefighters and first responders who've been responding all day to this blaze, we thank you. To the thousands of families, blah, blah, blah. Somebody replies, out of touch, Karen Bass is on a taxpayer-funded trip to Africa while her city plunges into crisis. The career politician's unfit to lead. And everybody's basically calling her out. Right here, LA Mayor Karen Bass is responsible for cutting the fire department by $23 million. She's currently in Ghana. She proposed a $12.8 billion budget, which included a $23 million reduction for the LA Fire Department. The budget was approved with a 12-3 vote, which went into effect July 1st, 2024. So they just cut the budget literally 6 months ago. How's that working out for you, LA? Again, people are just raging and calling her out on this stuff. Well, the LA Fire Department also passed a racial equity band to end systemic, institutional, and structural racism in LA. Part of it is a chart to map out the race of every employee to make sure they're racially diverse enough. So instead of worrying about, water in the fire hydrants, instead of worrying about making sure all your people are trained, instead of worrying about you're good to go for fire season or you're going to do some controlled burns to get rid of the scrub that might lead to a mass fire like this, no, they are putting out, this is from the letterhead, Los Angeles Fire Department, In accordance with the City of Los Angeles racial equity vision to end systemic, institutional, and structural racism in the City of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Fire Department has established a racial equity action plan, which at its core is to ensure racial equity by focusing on providing equitable opportunities and access for people of all races. And here's a chart where you are tracking the race of the staff and the gender of the staff. Well, how's that working out for you now? Way to really focus on the problems at hand, like a fire that might be raging and burning your city down. You know, when you put idiots in charge of things, and I understand many of you are not here in the United States that watch me and you're overseas and you're like, it's LA. Look, if Paris burned to the ground because of DEI and unpreparedness, I'd be doing this story, even though I'm American. If Sydney, Australia burned into the ground and they had DEI and no water and all, I'd be doing this. This is a global thing because Australia is going the same direction. England is going the same direction. Ireland, Sweden, Finland, Germany, Italy, all these countries are going in the same direction of DEI and women need this and we need strong that and blah, 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 right? And we're running out of money, so let's print more. All this is a global phenomenon. So that's why a story like this, it's really not about LA. It's about, well, it happened to LA. It will eventually happen elsewhere. It just hasn't happened elsewhere yet. But you are putting stupid people in charge that are totally focusing. And these are the weak people that keep voting for the dummies. And they're the weak people that are in the positions that were voted in by the dummies. And that's why I think this is important. And that's why I'm talking about this on all my channels today, because these are the weak people that bring bad times. I'd say weak men, but instead they're putting in weak people. The Los Angeles Fire Department celebrated a pride parade. The police chief handed out pride flags to attendees. She is hailed as the first female and LGHD TV chief and said her priority is DEI, not firefighting. And this is a picture of course, her in parades. I have it muted because who cares about all the sirens and the now, I understand when I was a kid, fire chiefs would go out, they would shake hands, they would have parades with their fire trucks and things like that. I'm fine with them being in a parade. This doesn't light me up, okay? But the fire trucks are coated in LGHD TV stuff and pride flags. So this isn't about a parade or like a normal parade. This isn't about a parade for the firefighters. It's about promoting a cause, diversity. Well, apparently at least, her priority isn't fighting fires. Her priority isn't making sure and this is only part of the story. I have so many other things to touch on today, so bear with me. But this is the part that strikes out to me the most because her priority isn't fighting fires. Her priority isn't fighting or hiring the best staff. Her priority is making sure there's enough women and brown people in the fire department. That's not focusing on the best. That's focusing on equality and equity. And when that is your priority and not training, you know, all you have to do is type firefighting training in YouTube or on Rumble or wherever, and you see these guys running up to buildings and hooking ladders and racing up them, and you see them with these concrete buildings that are, you know, like a couple stories high. They're not very big, wide, width-wise, but it's so you can light them, like they're made out of concrete, and you can fill them with burnable material. You light them on fire, and then firefighters practice, you know, hose techniques and how to go inside with your masks and your oxygen and how to rescue people in the smoke-filled room when you can't see anything, how to feel around, how to know when there's going to be a backdraft, how to know when things are going to go south, how to do your job. What are they doing? parades and worrying about the color of the people's skin and the gender of the people they hire. That's the problem. So she and her wife were just hired recently. Kristen M. Crowley, 19th Fire Police, or a fire chief of the LA Fire Department. She took oath of March 25th of 2022. And her goal is creating and supporting and promoting a culture that values diversity, inclusion, and equity while striving to meet and exceed the expectations of the communities are Chief Crowley's priorities. She's grateful for the opportunity to serve the city of Los Angeles. Now, she did throw in there to meet and exceed the expectations of the communities. Expectations of what? Diversity, inclusion, or firefighting? I noticed they don't really mention anything about firefighting or being prepared. You know how I know this? There's no water in the fire hydrants. All these diverse firefighters that are ready to put out fires, there's no water. So if you're out training and testing and preparedness and ready to go, you know what you might want to do? Make sure there's water in your city's fire hydrants. Oopsie. This is more about, I'll just play this. It's like a minute long. This is what the news is talking about. This is what the focus of Los Angeles Fire Department is about.
Los Angeles Fire Department is launching its first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau. It is dedicated to ensuring a fair and equal workplace environment.
I want you to listen to that again. They just launched I'll play it again then. Listen carefully.
Los Angeles Fire Department is launching its first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau.
The fire department launched its own diversity bureau. Not the city, not the mayor. The fire department launched its first equity diversity bureau. That means instead of focusing on fires, they launched their own bureau so the city's got a bureau and the police department's got a bureau. Everybody's got their own bureau of diversity. They created a subset of the fire department that is diversity.
It is dedicated to ensuring a fair and equal workplace environment.
Eyewitness News reporter Christian Cordero is live in North Hollywood with more on what it entails and why it's necessary. Christian?
Ellen, Colleen, the discrepancies are stark, even just on paper. The LAFD this year hired its first ever female chief, and it says so far this year, 8% of its applicants have been women. That might sound like a small number, but it's actually twice the percentage of female firefighters currently in the department. Every day, the LAFD is called upon to respond to crises, and today it is taking a step to resolve one of its own. The department's first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau will launch in January, 1 year since its first ever female fire chief, Kristen Crowley, was appointed.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business, how we take care of one another in the fire stations and in our work environment.
The plan is.
You notice she said nothing about fighting fires, how we take care of people internally, how we take care of people at the firehouses, how we work as I mean, call me crazy. Call me crazy. I thought fire department's primary focus was fighting fires. Maybe something's changed, and in my old age, old Grandpa Joker over here doesn't understand what's going on. Aren't firefighters supposedly their primary focus supposing to fight fires? Am I missing something here?
To do so by adding training and enforcing accountability. Calls for accountability have echoed for years. In 2021, women's advocacy groups, including one representing female firefighters, pushed for changes at the highest level, saying a system within the department exposes them to abuse, bullying, and a culture of intimidation and retaliation.
Okay, so they're more worried about the people and how they feel and how happy they are and investigating internal issues because women aren't in charge of things. They're more worried about that than fighting fires and training. Well, how's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? Well, there were so many things they could have done. And again, when you put dumb people who are hired for the wrong reasons in positions of power, we're talking about the very end failure, which is, ironically, the city burning to the ground. And a step below that, you might say, okay, well, we need firefighters. Well, they're incompetent. And not only are they incompetent, or many of them are incompetent because they're focused on the wrong things, but there's no water. There's no water. Let me go down. Let me switch the order of this a little bit. I'm going to put this up here. There's no water. So now the firefighters can't do their jobs because they're not qualified, and there's no water. That's the next step below, but down below, apocalypse of LA. Firefighters running out of water as fires tear through Los Angeles. California firefighters are running out of water as they desperately battle 3 rapidly growing wildfires threatening huge areas surrounded by Los Angeles, with emergency responders reporting bone-dry hydrants. The hydrants are down, one firefighter said over the radio. Water supply just dropped, added another. The Department of Water and Power confirmed reports of hydrants being empty without giving numbers. Billionaire LA developer Rick Caruso, former commissioner of the city's water board, said he noticed the dry hydrants while several homes near his glamorous Palisade Villages shopping center were fully engulfed in flames. There's no water in the fire hydrants, Caruso told the LA paper. The fire hydrants are there, and there's nothing we can do. We've got neighborhoods burning, homes burning, and businesses burning. It should never happen. Caruso said the problem stems from the reservoirs that feed the neighborhood's hydrants. There's a window into a systemic problem for the city, not only of mismanagement, but our infrastructure is old, said Caruso, who unsuccessfully ran for mayor in 2022. A spokesperson for the Department of Water and Power said crews were working in the neighborhood to ensure the availability of water supplies. Well, they failed, obviously. This area is served by water tanks, and close coordination is underway to continue supplying the area. Nearly 300,000 California power customers were left in the dark early Wednesday morning as fires wreaked havoc in the region, forcing 30,000 residents. We've already talked about this. The 3 fires are all separated. They've got winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, dry fuels, which is the wood management we'll get to next. And they said all cause of 3 fires are under investigation. Hey, here's something funny. Here's something crazy. Do you know who might have noticed dry fire hydrants if they were training and practicing and doing their jobs correctly? The firefighters, the diverse firefighters. So now you have incompetence of the firefighters, and then you've got incompetence of the city's water management. And they say, well, the infrastructure's old. Well, why haven't you fixed it? Why haven't you replaced it? You know, Governor Gavin Newsom's putting all this money into this boondoggle of a high-speed train where they've spent billions of dollars. And so far, the number of passengers that have ridden on this $120 billion train project, the number of people that have ridden on that train is 0 people. And the amount of track that has been built, I think, is 0. And the number of train stations they've built for the high-speed train is 0. And the number of passenger cars they've built for their $120 billion boondoggle, wait for it, say it with me, everybody, 0. Where did all those billions of dollars go? Blown into the dust? Where's the $20 billion that Gavin Newsom has raised to fix homelessness? Yet homelessness is at an all-time high. It's at crisis levels. Where's that $20 billion? I'm sure somebody has some money to fix this, but why wasn't it fixed? Because crooked politicians are lining their pockets instead of actually working on the problems. And then they come out to you, and the firefighters blame it on the fire hydrants, and the city's water management blames it on the mayor, and the mayor blames it on the governor, and the governor blames it on Donald Trump. This is what happens when you get incompetent people. Now, how did the fire start? Well, the prescribed burns that prevent mega fires. Why don't we use them in California, says Elizabeth Well, going back to 2020. They're not doing controlled burns from 2023. last year. This was a good year for prescribed burns. Why didn't California do more of them? It's because they don't want to put the money into it, and the firefighters and the people that are doing the controlled burns, either they don't get funding or they're told, don't worry about it. For forest managers to conduct prescribed burns, weather conditions have to be just right. Not too hot, not too windy, not too damp, but also not too dry. Just right. Goldilocks in the middle, said UCLA climate scientist Daniel Swain. Overall, experts say more prescribed burns is needed across California to prevent out-of-control mega fires. That fact is even more pronounced in cool, wet years like this one. Mild weather conditions provide the perfect backdrop for fire agencies to conduct large-scale controlled burns, which help prevent extreme wildfires. He said, he goes on to say, most days this year that were favorable for it, there really wasn't any fire activity. We could have done some controlled burns. And what'd they do? Nothing. They didn't do anything. Even the indigenous tribes of the area, which in the past, from my understanding, indigenous tribes, which were Native Americans, they even did controlled burns. They would go out and do controlled burns because they understood the threat. So you've got Native Americans that have known for several hundred years, you need to do controlled burns, and they didn't do any. They didn't do any. So again, put dumb people in dumb positions. Now, this is just this is a 3.5 minute clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing. This is a woman says, and after I heard this clip, I looked into it. The California insurance. So you may have fire insurance that you've been paying for a long time. Just months ago, many of the insurance agencies came in and canceled it. They say it was only for hundreds of people. Turns out it was for thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, just had their fire insurance canceled. So what happens to you when your parent, like this woman's parents, are 90 years old? They've lived in California for, I think she says 60 years. They probably bought their house for 7 grapes and a folk dance, right? And now it's probably worth millions of dollars. What happens when your insurance cancels on you a month or two ago and then your home burns to the ground? It would cost $5 million to rebuild in Los Angeles now. And these people don't have that money. I'm just going to play the beginning portion of this so you can hear that it's not just, well, a couple hundred people. There's lots of people that have been affected by this.
I know I'm not supposed to be here, but this is my parents' home.
I know the feeling.
And they just they got canceled from their fire insurance. So they're dealing with this. They're 90 years old. And through the state of California, because of this, they're 90 years old, that they've lived in this house for 75 years, and they've had the same insurance, and these insurance people decided to cancel their fire. And we're going through this, and it just happened, and they have no fire insurance. So thank you, California insurance companies, supporting residents who pay taxes and love California. And they wonder why people leave California.
First and foremost, you did get your parents out safely.
I live in Sierra Madre. My parents are in Sierra Madre, but...
And now you know that it is under evacuation as well, north of Sierra Madre Boulevard.
Yeah, I snuck here. You know, there's a will, there's a way. Probably shouldn't do it, but you know what? Under the circumstances, send me to jail. That's fine.
It is unbelievable what's happening here to the neighbors. Your parents' house is still standing. You had a hose. You're doing what you can.
I mean, I have a hose. It doesn't compare to these beloved neighbors.
Anyway, she goes on a little bit about her neighborhood and her neighbors and things like that. But what does it say when you've got a woman that sneaks to her parents' house to grab a garden hose? She happens to have a little bit of water in her area. And because her parents don't have any fire insurance anymore because the insurance companies canceled it last month or two, and she's standing there with a garden hose putting out whatever pops up around her little area to save her parents' house, she's doing more than the fire department is in her area. Now, I get that the fire departments can't be everywhere, but You think at least the fire department would say, well, okay, the fire department can't do much in these areas because there's no water. Send them to other areas to help the surrounding towns because they still have water and there's still fires. And maybe you could wet down some areas and some neighborhoods. Maybe you could preemptively wet down some houses and some grass and try to tamp and, push back a little bit. Nope, just, 40 some odd year old lady out there with a garden hose trying to save her parents' house. And good on her. Good on her for evacuating her family. Good on her for sneaking to the area. It's not smart, but I'd probably do the same thing. As a matter of fact, I know I'd do the same thing. I'd sneak to my parents' house and hook up a garden hose and see if I could save my parents' 90-year-old house because they don't have an insurance. California insurer canceled policies months before the LA fires. State Farm, one of the biggest insurers in California, canceled hundreds of homeowners' policies last summer in Pacific Palisades, the same area which is now being ravaged by a devastating wildfire. The move was just justified by the company as an attempt to avoid financial failure, as the frequency and severity of wildfires is growing in the Golden State, especially in at-risk zones. But as the multiple fires currently burning through the Southern California threaten to cause devastating loss for residents, many will likely need to rely on their insurers to get back on their feet after the blazes are contained. Newsweek contacted State Farm and the office commissioner, Ricardo Lara, for comment by email on Wednesday early morning outside of standing working hours. Why it matters: several private insurers have cut coverage and at risk across California in the past 3 years, leaving homeowners scrambling to find options for coverage. As a result, California's FAIR plan, which works as an insurer of last resort in the state, has more than doubled its policies between 2020 and 2024, reaching a total of 452,000, as reported by Cap Radio. Most insurers who have limited their offer in the state mentioned the rising wildfire risk as well as the state's regulations as the main reasons behind their decision. Unable to increase their premiums to a level that will match their growing risk, the companies have decided instead to cut coverage. Now, here's the truth of it, because I'd like to hate insurance companies, so I will. I hate insurance companies. I really do. They go out of their way they will gladly take your money, no questions asked. But then when you actually need to receive the coverage that you asked for, they fight you tooth and nail. And in some cases, you need to take them to court. So in nothing that I'm going to say following this, am I a supporter of these insurance companies. I hate insurance companies. Period. End of statement. But California has made it to where if an insurance company does have to say, okay, the risk of us having to pay out is X. So we need to bring in Y amount of money to be able to pay that out. And yes, they ask too much and they give out too little. Let me emphasize that again. But when California says, well, you can't raise premiums, and the company looks at it and says, well, we either will not make enough or we will make nothing, we need to leave. Florida is doing the same thing with flood insurance, right? And so the companies pull out. And now there's only one last choice, which is the California's FAIR plan, which is, I think, a government-backed insurance company. And the problem with that is government-backed things don't work, number one. And number two, if that many people are on that program and there's hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of loss, that insurance company will not be able to pay out because they won't have the money. And so not only were you paying insurance for fire coverage, thinking you have fire coverage, but that insurance company will just go bankrupt and you'll never get your homes rebuilt. You want to know how I know that? Look at Hawaii, that is still not being rebuilt from the fires and everything that happened there. A year or two ago now. They still haven't rebuilt those areas because of insurance problems and other things like that. So there's a good chance that whatever's burning in California right now may become a ghost town. And they'll probably go hat in hand out to the federal government asking for assistance. And because Trump, and I won't get into this portion of the politics of it, but because Trump actually genuinely cares about the people that are suffering from this, maybe our federal government does help them, which is our tax dollars being given to the residents of California to help them, which is a good thing. But they're the ones that keep voting in the incompetent people that let this happen in the first place. So our money, federal money, might be used to bail out the people that keep voting the dumb people into power, that keep making these problems happen. Do you understand? You see what I'm saying? I don't think that's a good thing. I'm just saying. But yeah, everything is absolutely burning to the ground. This is the real estate developer talking about the being no water in the fire hydrants. Let me pop this up full screen so you can just see some of the fires and everything that's going on. This is about 4 minutes. I'm going to let this play. I want you to hear it. This is from somebody right there on the ground that is aware of the situation. And I want you to hear his shock. He's kind of like, I don't understand. There's no water in the fire hydrants. Maybe a good time to figure out that is before you need it. You know, an ounce of prevention, et cetera, et cetera.
For covering this so well. Listen, it's a disaster to the 100th degree. It's beyond anything I think any of us could have ever imagined. But my heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching the small businesses around us go up in flames. This is people's livelihoods, so it's devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country, and we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild. But the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives. And again, if you don't have water, you can't put out fires. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in the coming days and weeks and months asking some really tough questions, and I hope all of you in the press do the same and start holding our officials accountable to run this city in a way that keeps people safe.
You are listening to Rick Caruso, of course, businessman and developer, and this is a live look from near his property in the Palisades Village. Your property at this point has been saved, and I certainly understand that your heart is first and foremost with the small businesses and the homeowners who have lost their homes. Have you been actively in touch with LAFD? Have you been out there? I don't suspect you have, given that it's such a dangerous area, but bottom line question is, have you talked to LAFD about the firefight and potential protection to your property?
We've been in communications with them on an ongoing basis all day long, and our senior team has been in touch with LA Fire. I think LA Fire is going above and beyond trying to manage this fire. I have nothing but praise to say for the fire department of LA and the county, but their hands have been tied, and they can't fight a fire without water and the resources that are needed. Everybody knew these winds were coming. The other question has to be, were all the things in place to try to, again, mitigate the damage here? But the real issue to me is twofold. We've had decades to go remove the brush in these hills It spreads so quickly. And the second is, you got to have water. And my understanding is the reservoir was not refilled in time and in a timely manner to keep the hydrants going.
So as he says here, and I won't, it's another minute or two, I won't play the whole thing. As he says, the reservoirs were dry. They were never refilled. Let's go back here. Again, environmental rules stoke anger as California lets precious stormwater wash out to sea. They had the ability to hold the water. They dumped it. They had the ability to clear up the brush. They skipped it. They had the ability to have good firefighters, and instead they worried about DEI. They blew it. It's all about the lack of water and hydrants now, and I'll close it out with this. Adam Carolla, I listened to Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew. They used to do a podcast, or actually a radio talk show in Los Angeles years and years, decades ago now at this point, called Loveline. And young people and older people alike would call in, and they'd ask either dating advice or love advice or health advice or, things like that. And Dr. Drew would answer the medical questions, and Adam Carolla would crack in wise with funny quips, but he also had good advice, and they were very popular. Years later, Dr. Drew went on to do a couple of TV shows, but he is a board-certified addiction medicine specialist. He now, ironically, started a program with Dr. Peter McCullough. You guys know, if you watch me occasionally, I'm always I'm talking about the wellness company and their medicine kits that I do the sponsored reads for. Dr. Drew and Peter McCullough teamed up to put these kits together because now Dr. Drew was, very much with the science. And then he said, wait a minute, the government's screwing with us about medicine and about COVID and he became a skeptic. And so he joined Dr. Peter McCullough, and they put out these kits and they started their own webpage to help people. Well, Adam, before he ever got into radio, he did construction, and because he even admitted, I'm good with my hands, I'm not a very smart man. But when he was a young man, he applied to become an LA firefighter, and he was told he had to wait 7 years because he wasn't black, he wasn't Hispanic, or he wasn't female. So this is Adam's now, I think, in his mid-50s, maybe 60. And when he did this, I think he was 18. That's 40 years California has been aware of these problems, at least, of the brush fire problems, of the water problems, of the hiring people that want to become firefighters, being told no because their skin is the wrong color. I'll play this, and then I've got one more thing we'll wrap it up with. Let me tune this up a little bit. It's only a minute long, so it's not too long.
Geez, I want to talk about my white privilege so badly. I graduated North Hollywood High with a 1.7 GPA. I could not find a job. I walked to a fire station in North Hollywood. I was 19. I was living in the garage of my family home. My mom was on welfare and food stamps, and I said, can I get a job as a fireman? And they said, no, because you're not black, Hispanic, or a woman. We'll see in about 7 years. And I went to a construction site and dug ditches and picked up garbage for the next 7 years. I got a letter in the mail sent to my father's house saying, your time has come to do the written exam for the LA Fire Department. I took it, and I was standing in line, and I had a young woman of color standing behind me in line, and I said, just out of curiosity, when did you sign up to become a fireman? Because I did it, or a person, 7 years ago. And she said, Wednesday. That is an example of my white privilege.
And there's a perfect example. Here's a guy that wanted, now I'm not saying his lifelong dream was to become a firefighter, but he said, Adam's, I think, close to 6'1", 6'1". He's a tall guy. He was an athlete in high school. So he was in good shape, tall guy, big guy. That's the kind of guy that's going to kick down doors and carry, fat women out of buildings. He had to wait 7 years. A woman who was black, female, she signed up on Wednesday. It's when you have your policies messed up like this, when you look at things and through this type of lens, we've said for forever, weak men make bad times. Well, the weak men in this case, and the weak women in this case, were, I'd probably say, boomers, because Gen X really isn't in control of a lot right now. Although maybe you could blame some of the Gen Xers, some of my generation. You could say we made tough times, but I've never had an easy go of it either, really. I've had to bust my ass for everything, and I've probably spent 90% of my adult life as living pretty close paycheck to paycheck. So I'm being a Gen Xer. I would like to push it back on the boomers myself. Maybe Gen X has some portion of this, but boomers pretty much made, they're the weak men that made the bad times. And now we have to change the expression, because it's no longer weak men make bad times. It's weak people, because now women are in there, and women are demanding these things, and women want equality, and women think we need to do this. And I'm not saying, women are the cause of all these evils, but you started worrying about how people felt about their job, and if they were equal, and if they felt represented, and if things were fair and balanced. You worried about that when women got into the work world. Before that, if a guy started talking that way, they'd say, shut up, buttercup, and stuff off. You got a job to do. You can either do the job or you can't. If you do it, you'll stay employed. If you can't, get out. That was the work world before women entered it. And because of that, you had the best in the positions. Now you don't. And the California firefighters and the California water management and the California mayor, or LA mayor, and the governor, and all these people, all they have is excuses. And to divert for just a moment, if you look at the problems that the UK is having right now with these gangs, right? The Asian men gangs, where they have possibly improperly had their way with thousands of English girls, and the cover-up, and the Keir Stammers, and I forget the other, Paulina or whatever her name is, that are saying, don't look into this, no investigations, don't worry about it. Moving along here, nothing to see. Oh, you're attacking us by wanting us to look into this stuff. That's how a woman talks. It's don't worry about it, just move on. No accountability. Don't worry about what we're doing over here. Oh, you're trying to hold me accountable? Oh, you're attacking me. Oh, you're being mean to me. Because of this, I'm getting harsh emails and people saying they want to hurt me. Stop talking about it. This is what you get, the weak people. And they will keep, and there's only two ways out of this. There's three, but we're not going to talk about one because it's just not going to happen. And that's people just change their minds. They realize I'm a bad person. I'm going to become a good person. That's not going to happen. There's two ways out of this. You hit rock bottom, and a foreign invasion comes in that is strong, that takes over and forces you to become part of its civilization. Or you hit rock bottom, and the people of its own civilization say they have enough, and they take over the institution. Someone's going to have to take over the institution. It's either going to be foreign-led or it's going to be native-born, but somebody's going to have to change this because it's a long way down. And we're seeing this. This is just one instance. It's a big one. A lot of people are going to be without homes because of it. And the very last thing I'll leave about this whole thing. Say what you will. I know this is a little politicky for Better Bachelor, but say what you will. But in 2019, almost 6 years ago now, Donald Trump on Twitter posted the following. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has done a terrible job of forest management. I told him from the first day we met, he must clean his forest floors regardless of what his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. He must also do burns and cut fire stoppers. Every year, as the fires rage and California burns, it is the same thing, and then he comes to the federal government to get money he comes to the federal government for money, help, no more. Get your act together, Governor. You don't see close to the level of, you don't see close to the level of burn in other states, but our teams are working well together in putting these massive and many fires out. Great firefighters. Also, open up the ridiculously closed water lanes coming down from the north. Don't pour it out into the Pacific Ocean. It should be done immediately. California desperately needs water, and you can have it now. Now, as you know, Donald Trump is a billionaire from New York City. He had been president for about 3 years at this point. He's not a Californian. He's not a California governor that's lived there for 20 or 30 years. He's not a California resident that's lived there. If a New York City boy that has been president, granted, is aware of the problems in California, don't you think that the governor is, and the mayors are, and the legislation and the fire department and the water level people, whoever, the water management and all, don't you think they know what's going on if Donald Trump knows what's going on? Of course they do. But they choose not to care. They would rather line their pockets, make deals with these insurance companies, worry about DEI, worry about what color of skin and who you're sleeping with and what your pronouns are and if you're a woman or a man. That's what they're concerned about. And because of that today and all the failures the whole way, Los Angeles burns in a hellfire. I hope the residents are okay. I hope they get out. That poor couple that's 90 years old, that's been there for 75 years. A lot of people don't realize California used to be a deep red state. Those people that live there 75 years, they've probably voted Republican every year. Again, not trying to put the politics portion of it into this, but not all the people vote for this stuff. Not all the people want it. The smart people, I think, that have the means and the money to do so left. So now you mostly have people that are fine with whatever's going on, and the poorest of the poor that can't leave, and a lot of homeless because it's got good weather there. It's just another little indicator of what's to come for many areas of the globe because of feminism and DEI and dumb people and leftism and all the other things that have gotten us here. So, good thing we're up on the mountainside or the hillside watching it all burn in this instance. But maybe in the next instance, we won't be so lucky and it'll be your area or your life that's burning. Let's hope not, but you never know. Wolf Joseph, $50. Thank you very much, Wolf Joseph. For the $50 donations, I usually assume you just became supporters. I appreciate that very, very much. Glad to see that you did. Guys, don't forget, you can become a supporter as well and get my live streams and a great community of like-minded people over on, I'm going to sneeze here in a second, so I've got to mute myself. Let's hope it's a one and done. You can join a great community of like-minded people. Rumble's really good about free speech, but we do one-off events. There's a great news feed where we share stuff, and people are talking about their experiences and meetups and recipes and home projects, and it's a great community. We also do movie nights on Saturday night at the movie. We'll do UFC nights on Saturdays sometimes and move the movie nights to Friday nights. So we almost have a weekly event we're doing. We watch football. We'll be doing, even if my beloved Buffalo Bills suck out against the Kansas City Chiefs and lose for the fourth time to Kansas City in the playoffs, we'll be watching playoff games and Super Bowl games or the Super Bowl game. We just have, it's a good community. So if you find yourself wishing, hey, I wish I had some cool people to hang out with and more like-minded, again, jump over to betterbachelor.locals.com. Become a supporter today. It's $5 a month. If you want to jump in for $50, you get a year, which is 2 free months. You support my work. You're behind a paywall, so you get to hang out with a good like-minded community where it's, I'd say, 99% free speech. You can't say you want to do harm to people, which I think is fair. Calls to action for harm is not good. And you can't post, the spicy stuff. So I think that's all fair. Other than that, you can pretty much say what you want and have the discussions that you can't be held on most other social media where you get banned. I think it's a great community. You should check it out. I will leave it there. Thank you all very, very much for joining me, and we will see you in the next one.